Listening to you. We have with us another eminent personality, Dr. Samir Kagalkar, convener, Economic Cell, Government of Karnataka, as our distinguished keynote speaker. I once again request CMA Professor Gopinath, Director, to introduce the distinguished guest to the audience.
Good morning once again. Just want to ask you a small question. How would you actually describe and call out the profile of the Pacific Ocean? Raddeep, our good friend, was speaking about the Pacific and saying half of India is that, forget that. But is it ever possible to call out the profile of a man whose area of work is much more than this country's size? I'm sure you didn't, or too many of you didn't understand what I actually tried to say by this. His work, his scope of work, consists of everything that could happen in our country plus outside. A young man with a lot of fantastic qualification, and his scope of work that he has actually achieved and is continuing to do is something unbelievable. As a young student, he did his BA in economics, sociology and English literature from National College, Bangalore, where he was topper for 3 years. He did his MA Economics, and from Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics, he did it. He also did his other program on economics again from the Norwegian School of Economics, and the top organization of this country, Indian Institute of Bangalore, he did his PhD, okay, and that was on corporate strategy. If you start to talk in terms of what he is now and what he has done in the past, it's amazing. You have heard Dr. Nirmala Sitharaman talk about the budget now, and for the last so many years she has been presenting it. Maybe even the core of our budget has changed. It is not necessarily the one person, Dr. Nirmala Sitharaman, actually presents the budget. She presents one. But the people behind it are such stalwarts, and very, very honored to say some of such people are in our conference this day and tomorrow. Some years back, we had another person coming in here. Again, such people who have been here. We had Chartered Accountant Gopalakrishna Agarwal who came up with it. The people who have been in such lineage and heritage actually control the country and run the show for us. Now, what is he as of now? If the budget of Government of Karnataka and the Indian budget is taken up, there is an economic cell which controls. He currently heads the economic cell of Government of Karnataka in terms of economics for the budget. For 2 years and 8 months now, he has been heading it, and I don't know how his family would actually see him. Does he have the time to even see his family? I'm very, very happy that he could manage some time to come to us. But honestly, I don't think they have even a single minute to spare. His other roles and leadership. He has a triple sector leadership, the concept proponed by Joe Nye, the former dean of Harvard Kennedy School of Government. He motivated Samir to gain exposure and leadership experience in all the three domains, very, very important: political, socio-economic. I'm sure we management students heard and we read something called pestle analysis. This exactly more than 70% of that comes up with Dr. Samir Kagalkar. Culmination of an interesting engagement with the BJP led to a full-time immersion with the governance of our country. He was with the Government of India as the additional private secretary to Union Minister of Chemicals and Fertilizers, the late Anant Kumar. Along with 3 other IIMB, XLRI, the alumni, Mr. Samir had co-founded eMBA course with the aim of improving quality in management education across Tier 2 and Tier 3 management schools. He strongly believes that management education requires reimagination as of now. He has worked with high-impact unicorns, startups like Ola, in the process learning a lot about public-private partnership, the mode of societal contribution. I don't think we require to know a little more than this. Maybe we'll start to feel, are we going to listen? Are we going to keep on listening to his profile? Let me unleash Dr. Samir Kagalkar to you, a very, very simple person. I've been meeting him at least for 1 year now in various functions. Every time I listen to him, I get a big lot of knowledge, and not chota-mota knowledge, something that is unbelievable. 10 days back, we were there at the budget function, and the way he spoke on the budget and introduced the man who was there, the central minister, Sri Piyush Goyal, was unbelievable. I would love to unleash Dr. Samir Kagalkar to you. Please, with rapt attention, listen, and let's have a round of applause for Dr. Samir Kagalkar. Thank you, sir. Please come.
Good morning. Dignitaries on the dais, my academic colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, the future of our country, the bright young minds of our country here. First and foremost, a sincere note of thanks for having me here, engage with you. I wouldn't dare say address you, engage with you, share a few of my thoughts in terms of what is it that we as a country can do, should do, must do. There couldn't have been a better opening remarks other than made by Rajdeep ji just now, who spoke of the prophets, the people, and the planet. We are talking of a future. We are talking of the challenges. We are talking of the opportunities. You're all management students. You understand SWOT really well. The strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. Prior to understanding what exactly the kind of a SWOT that you are facing or you will face going forth, let us look at the context of which we get to see our country today. The context of our country, the changes that are happening, and therefore as a second order derivative, the kind of challenges, the kind of opportunities businesses will get, individuals like you will get. As we're talking, we are the 5th largest economy in the world. 5th largest economy. Just about 10 years ago, we were a part of the Fragile Five. I'm sure you people read the international reports on country ratings. India was a part of the Fragile Five, as fragile as a glass. You just let it down, it will break. Today, the IMF calls India and its growth the bright spot in an otherwise dismal context. The world is going through a tough time, ladies and gentlemen. Let us not forget that. It's exceedingly important as a business, as a country, to have our eyes and ears wide open. What's happening in US? What's happening in Europe? Unprecedented inflation in the American situation. The typical American inflation rate is in the range of about 1.5 or 1.75%. The last few months have seen it cross 10%. Europe has had a 40-year high inflation rate, double digits. Unfortunately, Turkey is going through a very tough time with a natural disaster. But prior to that, the inflation rate in Turkey had crossed 65%. Sri Lanka is in a complete devastation. Pakistan is on its knees, literally with a begging bowl. Why is it that India is doing better? How is it that India is doing better? We heard of the strategic planning. We heard of thinking ahead. What do we need to be doing 20 years from now? The exact thinking that the Prime Minister of the country is sharing with us, how do we envisage our country 25 years from now? 25 years from hence, you are celebrating the 100th year of independence. You are a country which has come a real long way, fairly strong democratically, but for a few gaps and issues in a couple of years in 75 and 77, you had a fairly working, reasonable democracy. It has its own flaws. It has its own areas of development. But notwithstanding that, India has done a fairly good job of being a democratic country, and kudos to all the political parties, irrespective of who were in power. They have done a fairly good job. When we talk of the next 25 years, what are the challenges that comes to us? What are the opportunities that come to us? And I'll give you one instance on how you as an individual, how you as an organization, how you as an industry, most importantly, how you as a country must seize opportunities. Crisis is one aspect, opportunity is another aspect. It all depends how you look at it. It's either a glass full of water. Or did I say wrong? Just to see how attentive my friends are. How attentive my friends are is what I said. Absolutely. Half full or half empty, right? A crisis presents you with an opportunity. A crisis presents you with a challenge. The coronavirus, it's hit each one of us in a different way. Many of us have been hit personally. Some of us have seen very, very tough situations medically, probably even deaths in our own circles, immediate or extended. As a country, we went through a very, very tough period in the second wave. What can you do? What can you do to sort of go through this kind of a crisis? What do you take away from it? The whole world had a tough bearing with respect to COVID. The entire world's supply chain was dependent on one country, that was China. Two things completely changed the situation. One was the fact that if there was to be a lockdown in China, the whole world comes to a standstill. It's as simple as saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? The whole world had put all its eggs in one basket called China. And the second most important thing, the geostrategy started changing, geopolitics started changing. Countries weren't confident about Chinese disclosures. They were skeptic of its claims that it was a natural virus. Countries had to take a call, and they did take a call. The call was China +1. What does it mean? Instead of putting all your eggs in one basket called China, you would want to depend on China, but at the same time, look at another country for your supply chain, for your logistics. That provided you with an opportunity, a big, massive opportunity. How is it that we as a country made use of this opportunity? How many of you have heard of PLI? I'm sure you have heard of it. PLI. As management students, one thing that we were told when I was studying at the IMB campus, the maximum amount of economics you get to learn is via the newspapers rather than the textbook theories. So if you aren't spending more time on your newspapers, economic newspapers, you are missing out a lot. The kind of a relevance that you get, the kind of an understanding of day-to-day happening, and your ability to sort of understand and even predict. If you start reading it regularly, your ability to see what's going to happen probably 3 months from now, 6 months from now, becomes that much bigger and sharper. If you aren't already spending, I do request, please spend a good amount of time on the economic business newspapers. PLI is about production-linked incentives. What does it mean? I mean, you all want to invite industry to your country, to your state, to your city, ask them to invest, put money, give jobs, right? That's what we've been doing. And it's the right thing to do. You have had governments which invite corporates, it says we'll give you land free, we'll give you electricity at half the rate, we'll give you some amount of incentives in cash upfront, please start an industry. How successful has that been? If you look at the data, it's been hardly successful, just about double digits. People who have taken grants, people who have taken the support, have hardly delivered. What did the government do then? What was it different that it did? Thinking out of the box is very, very frequently used, but hardly implemented. It's here one gets to see the kind of a out-of-the-box thinking. You'd have heard of the business model of Dell, a negative cash flow operating model of Dell, right? Wherein you buy computers, the laptops, by giving your own configuration, you pay money upfront, after a week or so, Dell delivers to you. In the sense, Dell is not going to have the inventory cost. Dell is not going to have a problem of having stocks with it and not knowing whether it's going to get sold or not. But on the contrary, you give money upfront, and therefore it was making fairly good amount of profits. That was out of the box thinking for a company like Dell. What did India do? India came up with a very interesting proposition called a PLI, Production Linked Incentive. You want to have jobs for your people, you would want to have good amount of investment, you would want to have a massive increase in employment, income, and therefore taxes for the government, at the same time a GDP increase for the country. How do you go about doing it? The entire country had come to a standstill, 3 months of lockdown, an extended period of economic downturn. The first quarter went for a toss, unheard of recession. Thanks to the lockdown, the government didn't have money even to sort of take care of the day-to-day requirements, and especially the increase in demand for medical care. Where will you bring in this kind of money? The smartness lies in the fact that you were able to come up with a proposal like a PLI. You tell the corporates, hey, look here, I want you to invest in India, your money. I want you to invest in India. If you're already invested, if you're already stayed invested, you need to produce more than what you've been currently doing. What I will give is an unprecedented amount of incentive to you. For every 100 rupees that you generate, about 4 to 6 rupees I give it to you as an incentive. So you produce, you invest, you hire people, you produce, and you sell them. Based on your sales, both within India and outside of it, you are able to generate a 4 to 6% cash incentive. That's a massively big incentive for a corporate. Think of it exactly like the Dell model. The government didn't have to give money upfront. The government need not have to give land or a cash incentive or any other support as a matter of subsidy upfront. The only commitment that it gave was a massively big commitment, close to about 2.5 lakh crore. Fairly big amount, huh? 2.5 lakh crore, fairly big amount. And if you were to sort of compare that, for a comparison, that's the Karnataka budget for last year. The government of India, over the next 5 years, made a commitment of close to 2.5 lakh crore, saying that we will give you this kind of amount back to you, should you be producing more. It's purely production-linked incentive. Companies started moving away from China back to India. You had Samsung completely closing down its China office, completely shut down its China office. A lot of Japanese firms did the same. Apple, while it still retained its China office and factories, moved a fairly big amount of its operations, including its vendor operations, to India. Today you get to see made in India Apple phones. What was the net outcome? A lot of investment into India, lot of job opportunities for people like you and me, lot of job opportunities leading to income in the hands of the people, increase in consumption. At the same time, the government is not spending 1 rupee upfront. And where will it give 4 to 6%? From the taxes collected by the corporate itself. You have roughly about 15% taxes for the corporate sector, for the greenfield. You don't mind giving away 4 to 6% of it, should you be collecting 15% of it? That what an enhanced amount. This is the kind of a thinking, this is the kind of a thought process that is required today when you are faced with challenges which are mighty, which are seemingly unsurmountable, but at the same time, should you have a cool mind, you should be able to overcome. This is on the challenges that you get to see on the manufacturing front, from the infrastructure front. Now look at probably our medical care, medical research front. Each one of us here, I presume, are vaccinated, double dose at the minimum. Some of you probably with the booster dose as well. Imagine a situation where in our country, earlier, would probably have to wait about 8 years, 10 years, 12 years before you actually got your vaccine doses. Why? Because the vaccines were being produced outside. Why were they being produced outside? Because they were working on the cutting-edge research there. So they would do the research, produce there, take care of their people, later on go to the other countries like India. You are in the long list of queue, Keep waiting, and at some point in time, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, if you are lucky and fortunate enough, you get your vaccines. This time, once in a century pandemic, it was mid-December that the American first vaccination dose was given, and exactly about a month later, 16th of January, 2021, you had the first dose of vaccine being given in India. Unheard of, unprecedented. How did this happen? I don't know how many of you understand Sanskrit. Allow me to quote a Sanskrit shlok. Amantram aksharam nasti, nasti moolam anaushadham, ayogyaha purusho nasti, yojakas tatra durlabha. That's exceedingly important for a managerial student like you. What does it mean? Amantram aksharam nasti. Every akshar, every letter, every syllable is as good as a mantra. Nasti moolam anaushadham. Every plant has a medicinal value. There is no plant, no herb that doesn't have a medicinal value in it. Ayogyaha purusho nasti. There is no one man, no one person who is useless. If someone were to call you useless, it reflects on him rather than on you. Then what is the crux? What is the takeaway? The shloka says, yojakas tatra durlabha. The person who can put things together, the person who can see the strengths, the inherent strengths and the weaknesses of a person, map his strengths to the opportunities, to the context, and therefore say, hey, you are good in that, why don't you do it? That is the kind of a managerial capability that you should develop. The same research community that India had 20 years ago, we have it today. The same facilities in terms of money and resources that we have, similar thing, nothing different. The same bureaucratic system that we had 20 years ago, we are having today. Same set of people, same incentives, same salaries, probably marked for the inflation with a TAD and a 6th, 7th pay commission. What changed was the fact that you had a yojaka. You had a person who would coordinate well, who could put it across and say, we as a country are capable of doing it. Let me know where the roadblocks are. How do you plan it for the next 1 year? If at all we are talking of a lockdown on the 24th, 25th of March, how fast can we get India-made vaccine? 6 months, 8 months, 1 year? In just about 9 months' time, we had our first vaccine being rolled out, being administered. It's a matter of immense pride for the country because it gets to show to us that we as a country